This is from a discussion over Virtua Fighter 5. Harada asked about the netcode method and whether they use rollback. Aoki confirms it's not rollbacks, despite Sega of America's regular request for them to add rollback. Yeah, Sega of America kind of knows a lot more about the community backlash from kind of Western audiences, because that's kind of the audiences that get affected by rollback the most. They know better. It's essentially the same delay-based P2P method conceived for the PS3 360 versions of VF Final Showdown. If you watch the stream, you already know this. Yeah. We talked about that in the Virtua Fighter video. God. They, mostly Harada, explain how retrofitting rollback into 3D fighting games in particular is tough due to the fact that they're presupposed in fluid, smooth animations, as opposed to the limited keen animations of 2D games, which makes the frame skipping more conspicuous. God, okay, I kinda wanna go through this entire thing before I start talking shit. That's the claim, that the animation in 3D games is too smooth. They, again Harada, also talk about how there are lots of little things you have to do to mitigate the visual impact of rollback on 3D fighting games, and about how 3D fighting games is too broad because the visual techniques and overall move input timings are so different from game to game. Yeah, you're kind of destroying your point, right? Like, pretty much every fighting game that's being made these days has some kind of 3D, like, you know, it's done with 3D models, 3D animations, all that stuff. So, Caleb, thank you for the hydrates. So, pretty much every fighting game being made these days has, except maybe BB Tag, has some 3D animation, 3D models, all that stuff. And you're kind of countering your own point, like, oh, rollback is too difficult to implement on 3D games, and also 3D games is not a thing that you should say because they're too broad. Harada uses Soul Calibur as an example. When characters swing their weapons, there's a color trail that follows the arc of their swing in a smooth line. That line becomes jagged as frames are rolled back, so it's a very obvious indicator of how a rollback can impede a game's visuals. God, this is the shittiest example I've ever seen, because it's easily refutable by someone with like half a brain's worth of knowledge about rollback and how trails work and that shit, but okay. The interviewer asks about Tekken 7's rollback implementations. He says they're able to track when the game rolls back and by how much, and that network environments like Japan, it doesn't have to roll back often, so they added it in consideration of the overseas infrastructure. Aoki says they conducted a weekly international test for VF eSports netcode. He thinks their implementation was the best option given the circumstances, that they were using VF5 as a base, and that Sega of America's staff were surprised and convinced it would be okay once they actually tried it. No! I mean, you can claim that, and then what do they say? Do they start like a war about the netcode? The interviewer says games between Japan, US coasts have to have issues. Aoki says it's fine, as long as the connection is stable. Harada talks about how packet loss is a bigger impediment to smooth play than distance, and how long-distance play can be fine with a solid connection. No! Aoki understands a lot of demand for rollback from places where bad connections infrastructure, and while it would be nice if infrastructure could be improved around the world, that's a tall order, so they're considering various approaches on their end. Yeah, they're called rollback. Harada talks about the increase of traffic caused by the pandemic has made packet loss bigger and more a general issue worldwide. Shut the fuck up, Harada! Holy shit! How is Harada still on this train when Strive feels so good? Good question. No, listen. The United States needs better infrastructure. That's it. You know, the pandemic. There's packet loss. Whoa. Harada talks about how the increase of traffic caused by the pandemic has made packet loss more a bigger and more general issue worldwide. And I had heard certain game devs have been told the online got worse after the last update, even though they hadn't changed anything. You would typically see the online experience affected by occurrences like massive spikes due to smartphone OS revisions or a general increase of traffic at night. But now there's tons of traffic everywhere at all hours. But from the player's perspective, it's an issue with the game. There are ways you can design around or and account for external factors like network issues at the game design stage. Yeah, it's called rollback. But it's not so easy to do with existing games or legacy franchises like Virtua Fighter and Tekken that have held and animated in particular fashion for 25 plus years. Harada also mentions other factors that have come into play, like modern LCD displays. The D in LCD stands for display, I think. Lag introduced by game engines, less direct connection between the control input and hardware. The gamer's design can and do gradually change with circumstances, but there are always trade-offs. TLDR, VFE Sports doesn't use rollback due to dev circumstances and being built off like an existing game, but they understand the demand for it and they're keeping it in mind for the future, blah blah blah. Shut the fuck up, Harada. And I think that's it. So here's the first anti-rollback claim. We're gonna go through it in a tiny bit. But the second anti-rollback claim this week that I've seen, at least, it's from a while ago, but I've seen it, July 7th, like 2 days ago. Okay, so this is the developer of a game called Samurai Gun. Rollback works in fighting games because the movement is slower and there are long warm-up animations that let the game state correct itself instantly without too much disruption. This is a one-hit kill game where attacks come out instantly. Rollback would just mean you would see yourself die instantly to teleport attacks. Rollback isn't a magic no-lag solution. It has trade-offs that are worth it in some game styles and not worth it in others. No! 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 God. Okay. Let's take things one by one. Let's take a look at fuck. Okay. Let's go back to Harada's claims and let's talk about shit. Harada explains how retrofitting rollback into 3D games in particular is tough due to the fact that they are presupposed and fluid, smooth animations, blah 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 blah. Which makes the frame skipping more conspicuous. Okay. Fluid, smooth animations, you say? This is a video about, there was in vanilla Street Fighter V, there was a slow motion lag, so the game ran very slowly. Street Fighter V, 3D-ass game, and it's running at like half speed. Check out how smooth these animations are. We're not dealing with like 2D games anymore. Like they're keyframed, but they're keyframed on a 60 FPS basis. Like the animation is not running at 30 FPS, at like 20 FPS. The animation is running at full frame rate. So don't talk to me about like smooth animation and all that shit, first of all, because that seems weird. What 3D games do instead is they do actually have blending in between animations. So let me see if I can find a clip. They do have like some frames of blending in between animations. Because let's say you hop kick from crouch. If you hop kick from crouch, your hop kick is actually more evasive because you are, low to the ground, and your animation of being low to the ground is blending into the animation of the hop kick. So you're actually more evasive if you fully crouch and then hop kick. But that's mostly imperceptible, and I have to tell you that it happens, otherwise you don't really know it happens. Like, you don't really get it. So, the visual impact, Tekken slowdown and modern hits is also a good way to show how they interrelate them. Every game interpolates the animations. Every game. like in between, not the canceling, right? Even Tekken kind of interpolates animation, like even kind of has canceling, because some animations have recovery frames that you cancel out of. And essentially the blending is like, I don't know, 0.1 seconds, maybe less. But still, it's not a significantly different paradigm to mean that you have a worse online experience. But retrofitting rollback into 3D fighting games, yeah, it is kind of hard. It is a bit harder than 2D games because it is 3D games. You know, 2D games are like, you sample a frame and the frame is like, okay, COD Pink.net time. You sample a frame, right? And the frame is like, here's a hitbox here and here's a hitbox here. And like in relation to the character, they don't really care anything about the character animation. They don't really care about anything. Here's like you have kind of the origin of the character, which is like a point, and then there's like, okay, like 30 units up and like 2 units to the right, here's the hitbox. They don't really care about the animation or anything. It's just kind of raw data, and that's very kind of simple to compute. When it comes to 3D games, the 3D games have to compute, basically have to sample animations, because the hitboxes are attached to the 3D models and stuff, so they do have to have extra stuff where animations are sampled, blending is sampled, in order to make the gameplay work. So they can't kind of skip the animation sampling in order to kind of save on performance for individual frames. They have to kind of do this every frame. So actually optimizing a 3D game for rollback for like 8 frames of rollback, which is the magic number, is a bit more difficult. That's true. But it's not because of the fucking keen animations. The big problem, spoilers, the big problem is that Harada is a business person. He sees this completely from a product he has to sell. He's not a top player. He's not a competitive player. He does not understand how delay hurts the game, and he does not get how like all of this shit works. Because from the perspective of a new person, you know, you see people who have just picked up the game and can't even tell that delay is there. Because they're kind of pressing buttons, right? They're kind of like focused on what they themselves are doing. And Harada's like, yeah, okay, we also added fucking, you know, we also added a huge input buffer to help. And it's like, yeah, like on a low level, it kind of works. So from his perspective, it's like, how do we make, you know, a solid product, a product that feels the same way online as it does offline? And for a lot of people, this is kind of how it does. Which makes the frame skipping more conspicuous. I don't think it makes it more conspicuous than any 2D game. I think, I don't want to say the standards are high. I want to say the attitude is wrong. Harada talks about how there are lots of little things you have to do to mitigate the visual impact of rollback on 3D fighting games, and how 3D fighting is too broad because the visual techniques and overall move input timings are so different from game to game. Harada can't KPD. Here's the thing. Let's look at a move list. Who's your favorite Who's your favorite Tekken character? Pick a Tekken character. In the chat, pick one. Miguel, neat. Miguel move list. Yay. Miguel, you know, much like every other character in Tekken, slow ass buttons. You know, the fastest buttons you have in Tekken, with like 2 or 3 exceptions, are 10 frames. The maximum rollback we want to we have to support to make games run smoothly, like 99% of games plus run smoothly, is 7 to 8 frames. The average frame the average startup of a move in like Street Fighter, you know, Guilty Gear and all that shit's like, you know, 4 frames, 5 frames, 6 frames, actually lower than a whole bunch of the, actually lower than kind of the second half of the upper kind of limit of stuff. Yeah, I said like 2-3 examples, right? If you want me to list them all, it's like Ling Xiaoyu back 1, Yoshimitsu Flash is like 6 frames with the sword, 7 frames without the sword. It's like, okay, I get it. Literally 2-3 examples. Back 1! Oh god. Let's take a look at back 1. Let's take a look at a random S move, and I'm picking back 1 because it's give me back 1. Jeez. Fine, let's pick a kick. Kick is being done. Let's say average case scenario, even worse case scenario. 5, 6 frames of rollback. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You skip to here. Is this 30 FPS? This is 30 FPS. Actually, I should have done 3. 1, 2, 3. This is where we skip. The maximum amount of frames of rollback we need to like cover 99% of our cases is 8 frames. This is where you skip to with a 6 frame rollback. It's happening again. You skip from this to this. This is the skip. Like, this is the amount that the dude moves in 3 frames. 1, 2, 3. Let's say even here, let's like 8 frames. You skip to here, and he has all the rest of the fucking motion, which you're not gonna react to anyway. Literally unplayable. It's like, you can't fucking see it most of the time, right? A lot of the moves are designed in 3D are like, no, you don't actually like really see a big difference. Because they're all so slow. Let's look at another example. Next move in the fucking thing. Remember, this is 30 FPS, so I'm gonna... 1, 2, 3. Oh shit! We skipped here. Look, we have all the fucking other motion, and this is 6 frames of rollback. 6 frames of rollback is like a very good worst case scenario. 6 frames of rollback is like 250 ping, 250 ms, roughly. If you had like 1 or 2 frames, Harada said they're faster than 2D. There's plenty of 18, 22 frames that are super unreactable or super hard to. Why not? You're not wrong. Let's look at down back 2. Is it down back 1? He has like a kind of stable low. Hey, look, here's a kind of slow low that a lot of people actually don't block. Why? Because a lot of those starting frames are kind of, you know, standing. By the way, we're way past the maximum rollback. Let's roll back on a low that a lot of people just don't block. What? Okay, so press here. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where we skip. We skip from idle to this. His like posture has not changed that much, that significantly. This is not like the super duper the parts you react to. You react to more like, you know, this kind of motion here, but you get to see the important bits. You get to skip what? This and this and this and this frame. You get to skip these frames where like literally nothing happens with the rollback. Right? So it's not like the rollback makes this move unreactable, because the beginning frames of this move are literally nothing. This move, whatever, boop, 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 boop. Here we are. It rolls back 6 frames, one of the worst case scenarios you can have, and you're still arrived to a like recognizable pose. And it's like, okay, what's the problem then? No problem. So the whole like, you know, 3D games, you know, are so difficult to add rollback to. It's complete bullshit. Especially because there's so many slow moves in those games where it like the beginning few frames don't mean anything. Like, the thing is, you need, again, let's say 7 to 8 frames to cover most of your cases. And 7 to 8 frames is not a lot, especially like it can be a lot, let's say in Guilty Gear Strive, where it means like, oh, you get hit by a 5K and you can't see it until like later, but we can talk about that. And we will talk about that. I got pinged. Okay, so let's go back to the bullshit. I'm gonna switch albums real quick. I don't know what to switch to. This one. You know what? Every time I don't know what to switch to, just pick this one. Okay, so let's go back. Harada uses Soul Calibur as an example. When characters swing their weapons, there's a colored trail that follows the arc of their swing in a smooth line. That line becomes jagged as frames are rolled back, so it's a very obvious indicator of how rollback can impede a game's visuals. This is where I say Harada is not a technical person, because this sounds like a talking point that he got from like some random developer, right? As a producer, he sat in a meeting where that kind of stuff was discussed, right? And that's how he got it. But like literally anyone, I don't know, it's such an easy problem to solve where it's kind of insane. Yeah, Soul Calibur is even slower than Tekken. And delays all of their effects until 6 frames to make carry cancel safe, since Soul Calibur has carry cancel and Tekken doesn't. Yeah. Soul Calibur seems like an even better fit for it, because Soul Calibur is slow as fuck. Okay, so let's talk about weapon trails, y'all. Everyone's fucking favorite subject. How does a trail work in a video game, right? A trail essentially works by sampling around points. Let's do points in pink. By sampling around points every frame and then generating geometry around them. So it will generate, let's go with a simple case, either generate or kind of transform geometry. Let's go with a simple case where it's like a quad. So let's say here's the first. I guess these are too small for you guys. Let me make them bigger. Let's say we have 2 points, right? The sword is here in the first frame and the sword is here in the next frame. Essentially what the game does is kind of generate camera facing geometry around this bit. So it will, let me do a wireframe real quick because I'm a pro gamer. So the trail is gonna be like, you know, depending on the thing, here's the triangles for the trail. And it's gonna generate this geometry, and it's gonna do some math to add UV mapping, and then there's gonna be a texture projected on it. When you add the next point for the trail, can you guys see everything? Yeah, you can. Okay, so when you add the next point for the trail, oh geez, wrong color, oh no, can't be ruined. When you add the next point for the trail, right, you take the same geometry, oh jeez. You take, you know, you generate more points and you connect them to the previous geometry, and then you update the UV maps, and here's essentially a triangle strip. And you project a texture on this, and that's how you make trails. Here's, I guess, their problem, right? By default, when you open up, let's say Unreal Engine, let's say Unity Engine, they will have a built-in kind of trail system that says, okay, every time I'm about to be rendered, I'm gonna create one of these points. So I'm about to, like, you know, I got rendered last frame here, I'm getting rendered this frame here, I'm gonna create this point and then do some stuff. And the problem is when the game rolls back, these don't get rendered. So let's say we have a few points. So let's say we have a bunch of points that make an arc, right? Let's say we're currently on this one, and then the game rolls back over here, and then resimulates these frames. Which means, you know, it resimulates these frames without rendering them. So these won't exist. So we essentially delete these because these get simulated without being rendered. So the default behavior will make like a line that's like boop, boop, instead of, you know, what it should have been like this before. How do you solve this problem? Easy as fuck. Like I said before, when you're making a 3D game, you have to sample the animations every frame. Like, the hitboxes are tied to the animations. The hitboxes are tied to the skeleton, the skeleton of the character. They're not just data that you kind of handle in the background, and then the character is just set dressing. The character animation does affect these. So basically, instead of tying the point creation here to rendering, you do it like everything else. You do for rollback. You decouple this from rendering. So you're rolling back these missing frames. For every frame, you're processing and not rendering. You generate a point, but you don't generate. Let's do the geometry too, I guess. So the geometry is like boop, boop, and then it would go boop. So when you're generating a new point, you don't generate the geometry or anything like that. You like add all the points to your fucking list. And on the last one, when you're gonna render the frame, you batch create the geometry for all of them, and suddenly, boom, you have a fucking nice trail again. Like, instead of letting built-in behavior where these points are generated every time the thing is rendered, you generate these points on every frame that you processed, but then you only generate or update the geometry when the game is being rendered. And you do it for multiple points. Hey, that's very cool. There's a bit of an oversimplification because you do need to kind of properly save the state for all of these, and potentially take some steps to make sure that when you roll back, the UVs aren't different and stuff like that. But it's a very easy problem to solve. This is a good example of how rollback affects a lot of things. Let's go back to paint.net. When you implement delay netcode, delay netcode is basically a green light, red light, right? Your game doesn't have to worry about shit. Your game is built to operate linearly, and you have a green light, red light. When the light's at red, the game doesn't advance, and when the light's at green, the game does advance. And that's the whole I have already made the point, but here's the visuals. But so when the light's red, the game doesn't advance. When the light's green, the game does advance. When does the light become red, and when does the light become green? The light is green as long as you have inputs from your opponent. The light is red as long as you don't have inputs from your opponent. It's very simple to make the thing, to just like make a game, and then let's say this is the game. That's not what a game looks like. This is what a game looks like. This is what a game looks like, okay, the game. And inside here you have all the fucking gameplay and all that stuff. And you're not this kind of game. Okay, so you have here the gameplay. And from the gameplay, you output, audio and video. Trails already get screwed up when the game started? That's funny. So, you output audio and video. And what do you input? You input like controller inputs. So you have this is a very, very simplified graph of how a video game works. So P1 inputs. Hate video games. P2 inputs. Neat. This is how a game works, essentially. You know, the processing happens and you output an audio and a video. When it comes to delay-based netcode, you don't have to really change the structure, right? When you're playing with someone online, you basically have a network part that just kind of feeds inputs to player 2 inputs or player 1 inputs or whatever. And that's essentially it. And then you add a thing in the middle here in the gameplay that says halt if no inputs. And that's it. Taking a game that you've already made and adding networking to it in this way, assuming, and that is a big assuming it is deterministic, of course. That's a big assuming. That's a big deal. But we're not talking about that today. But assuming you have a deterministic game, this is just it. That's all you have to add. You basically have to add a thing that's like hold if no inputs, and then a thing that feeds the network inputs to the player 2 inputs. When it comes to rollback, though, this whole, like, the outlying structure is kind of the same, but this gameplay bit, hello wife, this gameplay bit is like an eldritch mess, because every single individual part of the video game, right, has to have functionality for being rolled back and being simulated multiple times per frame. It has to be able to deserialize, to serialize, to like save its state to the disk, load its state from the disk, handle object references, handle all that shit. So rollback is really fucking difficult, and it is very wide-reaching. You don't really like, it's not really one part of the code base that you manage. The whole code base essentially has rollback specific code and stuff. So yeah, it is a very far-reaching kind of thing. But it's not because of the fucking it's not because of the fucking animations and not because of the fucking trails. You fixed, these are problems that you fix. And now we're kind of going to the shitty the shitty Outlook issues. Harada uses Soul Calibers and the interviewer asks about Tekken 7's rollback implementation, blah blah blah. Aoki says they conducted weekly international tests for VFA Sports netcode. He thinks their implementation was the best option given the circumstances that they were using VF5 as a base. That Sega America staff were surprised and convinced it would be okay once they actually tried it. How many? When does Bamco hire you? I'll make an announcement in this week, I hope. Bamco will never hire me. I will never work for Bamco. Anyway, so Aoki says they conducted blah, blah, blah. How many people do you think in Sega of America and Sega of Japan, how many of them do you actually think there are like even like intermediate level fighting game players? How many? Probably not that many. And that's still because, like, as you can see later, it's like packet loss is a bigger impediment to smooth play than distance. Long distance play can be fine with a solid connection. Or where is it? Where is it? But both this guy and like both Harada and like some other guy were like, yeah, long distance play is fine as long as the connection is stable. So they absolutely do not understand the value of like having a low enough delay. And that kind of shows in, first of all, how they talk about their games, and second, how they design their games. Tekken has had, hi Jesse, Tekken has had a very kind of generous input buffer so that you can kind of do your combos, your basic combos very easily. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Harada is talking shit about netcode again. Harada is talking shit about rollback again. And he's like mega wrong. Again. So their perspective is, as long as there's no drops, as long as there's no packet loss, as long as the game doesn't stutter, it's fine. They don't understand. Tekken lowers input delay with a rollback and it hurts your soul. Yep. The update was good though, what the heck? Anyway, so the interviewer says games between have issues. Aoki says it's fine as long as the connection is stable. Harada says blah blah blah. How long distance play can be fine with solid connection. They don't understand how input delay absolutely hurts these games. And Harada, of course, used to say like, hey, you guys don't know anything about input delay because Tekken has like 10 frame moves, so 4 frames of delay means nothing. And like, no, because movement and like your reaction time are affected. Like movement is instant, and you're like, let's say you want a dash block, that shit's instant. And like, no amount of input buffering, no amount of anything will fix that. But that's a kind of a level of play that does not reach these people. What these people want is a smooth kind of experience, a stable experience, and the input delay does not matter, because from their perspective, they're like, okay, we've done something on the design side. Or is it? Games design can gradually change with circumstances, but there's always trade-off. They're like, so like, essentially, they're like, okay, we've made moves a bit slower, we've made movement a bit weirder, we've added a big input buffer, so we've absolutely 100% like accounted for rollback. It's fine. God. And that's again kind of a business perspective, right? It's more about like what they see as presentation. So what they're worried about is like a new person. Harada is probably playing up. Tekken 7 has rollback. They already have rollback. Of course, they don't want to invest in anything, but like in new games, they don't want to invest in rollback for like, you know, stuff like Soul Calibur, you know, retrofitting rollback. Tekken 7 has rollback though, they've already done it. What was I gonna say? But yeah, it's a matter of kind of valuing the games. Just say rollback backwards and wrong? No? But I can talk about that. Essentially, they're worried about the too many things. Okay, so essentially they worry more about the presentation of the game rather than the functionality. They're in their minds, like, you know, someone picks a game and, you know, there's teleporting online and all that stuff. It's like, wow, Tekken doesn't feel the same. Tekken is not like I remember from my childhood. And in a way, like, whoever their kind of, you know, whoever their focus group is, whoever like they have in mind, whoever the makeup guy is in their brain, they're kind of right, because new people, like casual people, don't really care too much about delay. And let's talk about the fucking rollback in Tekken 7. Tekken 7, a lot of people are like, Tekken 7 does not have rollback. Tekken 7 does not have rollback. Why? Because the rollback wasn't really used. First of all, rollback was a limited 3 frames, meaning there was still variable delay. In order to account for, again, 99.9% of your matches, you're gonna need to support a maximum of 7 to 8 frames of rollback. Let me find you exactly where I'm getting this figure from. It's a talk from... Hey, oh my god, I have it like super right here. Okay. Yay, latency curve. Over here, let's fucking go. Can I zoom? God, no. Okay, so... You can't really see it, but essentially it's like... It's a kind of a... It is a graph of data that they got of what kind of latencies their games are played on. And, oh god, I clicked outside. So these blue lines are, you know, the kind of buckets of latency. So like in between 115 and 135 was like 12% of people. And then the green line in the back or in the back here is like kind of the rolling percentage. So everything below this is 98.87%. Everything below this is 98 point something percent, right? I think this here is essentially 260 something milliseconds. I think that's like 8 frames, 7 frames of rollback, or 260 something. Let me do the math real quick. Sorry you can't see it, but you can see the name of the talk, I think, at the top right. It's called 8 frames and 16 ms. Let's see. And this is round trip time, so you kind of have to have it. So 266 here is like 8 frames. And if I read this correctly, it's like 98.47%. So 98.47% of your games is going to be, no, round trip. It's round trip, so you take half. So that's 8 frames, so 98.47% of the matches played in like, MKX, I think, and Injustice 2, or MKX at least, before the rollback, maybe MK9, were around these kind of numbers, right? So for if you support 8 frames of rollback, you support quite a lot of stuff, quite a lot of connections. So Tekken was 3 frames, meaning it can't really support a lot of connections. So what are they gonna do? They're gonna add a lot of delay on top of it. And like it's gonna be variable delay depending on the connection. So what the player saw was variable delay, no roll, one kind of strike for no rollback. What else did the player see? The delay was kind of what they would expect for a game with no rollback. So like if the delay in between them was like, if they were getting 5 frames in a delay game, they would be getting around 4 to 5 frames also in Tekken. Why? Because I'm pretty sure they didn't really use the rollback to reduce delay. They still had variable delay, and they set the delay pretty much to what it needed to be for you know, the ping, essentially. So they didn't use the rollback to lower the amount of delay. They used the rollback to account for dropped frames, for dropped packets, for unstable connections. Why? Because they want, in the average and best cases, that the game runs as smoothly as offline. No rollbacks, no, you know, no jittering, no nothing. And then when the Wi-Fi player drops the packet, like, oh, okay, then we can do something. Not much slower though. It is 3 frames, but not really that much lower. Now that they have 5 to 6 frames of rollback, when did they say that? I'm pretty sure, like, if he said that after season 4 or wherever or the network patch that they did. Yeah, I would absolutely believe that, because now they are doing that, and now you're seeing pre-season 4. Okay. I don't think it's that much slower. It is like 3 frames, and there wasn't a lot of visible rollback, so I don't think they used the full 3 frames to lower delay. Probably they lowered it by like 1 frame. But yeah. That's kind of the problem with Tekken. Like, it did not have enough supported frames to kind of do that. You haven't seen an improvement in Tekken 7? I've seen an improvement in Tekken 7. I played Tekken 7 quite a lot, and I've seen a pretty good improvement in my average case. I haven't seen an amazing improvement in the worst cases. So playing like with another continent, not really amazing still, but playing with EU, it's better. PS4, I don't know about PS5, but PS4 Tekken at least was like miserable because the amount of input delay it had natively was like a 3-bar connection on PC just by default. So it was fucking terrible. I don't think they have done anything about that. Okay, so these guys are fucking business people. They want their game to look nice, blah blah blah. Let's look at the code tweets. The Dunning-Kruger ass attitude is extremely toxic for the game industry. 100%, Vicky, let's fucking go. Everyone thinks this like sucks. Like nobody took this well, right? Oh, fuck. Thank you, Star Trek Voyager. Harada's stubbornness towards not implementing retrofitting rollback is so comical because he claims it breaks up innovations of 3D games, unlike delay-based netcode, which is not at all known for choppiness or sluggy behavior. So what I understand from it is Aoki wants to try and look at rollback, and Harada is constantly trying to say rollback is bad and pointless. Shit. God damn it. Yeah, that attitude absolutely sucks because he's not listening to the players. He's essentially kind of going into the business decision side of things. Like, hey, we want Tekken to feel like X. We want this to feel like Y. And this whole kind of like point is based on essentially just kind of speculation on what rollback does and how bad rollback is. It's not even investors, right? It's like making the game look good to casuals, or like what they perceive casuals will hate. Casuals like be like, oh, rollback, like, you know, they rolled back like 4 frames and they got hit by a jab, and they're gonna be like, oh, that's so unfair, how could I have seen that? It's a jab, you couldn't have seen that anyway. Just sounds like a big misunderstanding of what rollback is and does. Absolutely. Oh, this one we'll talk about, but this one too. But also, Harada also kind of has a bad, kind of does not understand. Bandai has had a consistently terrible take on this problem for years. Yes, they have. Wait, why aren't you guys in the thing? God damn it. I thought I added a fucking... Oh shit. The heck's happening? Oh. Why isn't this here? Jeez. That should have been there. Hello. Bandai can barely code these. I don't want to say that. Red Muffler, oh my god, thank you for this sub. Fuck, this was off, so I didn't get a song. Shit. Shit, okay. Thank you so much for this sub. Okay, so let's kind of talk about this because that kind of naturally goes into what this is. And essentially, yeah, like Japanese developers don't kind of understand as much what kind of rollback is and how it affects a game. And how, like, your average case of like 4 to 5 frames of rollback that's not great is like affects your game very, very little. The fact that everyone functions as well as it does baffles you. Ebon has a shit ton of frame of like input lag, but it works good. I have fiber. Okay, so yeah, second America. Our taxes, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about this. Hunter, you're getting ahead of time. You're getting ahead of time. Okay, so Abuk here, the person who brought Blitz netcode and Infinite Verses to light. So he's the person that popularized it. They kind of discovered and made a lot of videos about. So Samurai, so these guys are making a game, not Abuk, but he's mad at these people who are making a game called Samurai Gun. And let's look at misconceptions about rollback. Rollback works in fighting games because the movement is slower and there are long warm-up animations that let the game state correct itself instantly without too much disruption. This is a one-hit kill game where attacks come out instantly. Rollback would just mean you would see yourself die instantly to teleport attacks. Rollback isn't a magic no-lag solution. It has trade-offs that are worth it in some game styles and not worth it in others. Yup. Rollback. Where do I begin? Let's begin by looking at footage of Samurai Gun. Let's look at Samurai Gun 2 trailer. There's a tournament, there's a trailer. Multiplayer live gameplay demo. 13 minutes of gameplay. Okay, we're putting it in. This is obviously alpha footage, and the game is probably different from this. But yeah, I don't expect the pacing hasn't changed because I saw I saw more recent trailers. Let's look at this. Let's follow this person, right? And first of all, let's talk about rollback. When does rollback happen? Rollback happens when inputs change, right? Essentially, let's go back to paint.net. You have a frame buffer. And the frame buffer is like, your frame buffer is like, I'm holding right, I'm holding right, I'm holding right, I'm holding right. And now I'm holding up. Up. On the opponent's side, right? They're kind of, they don't have your inputs the moment you do them, so there is some kind of, that's why you would need rollback and input delay. But essentially, what your opponent has is your inputs from a few frames ago. So on your opponent's side, it looks like this. You're holding, you're holding right, you're holding right, you're holding right. At this point, it doesn't have a new message from you, right? Because it's like received like this message and stuff late. So what the game's gonna assume is that like you're holding right this whole time, right? So their game does not know that you held up because that message hasn't been received yet. So the game's gonna assume that you're holding right, and then when the message comes that you pressed up, it's gonna roll back all of these I'm holding up inputs, and it's gonna press up. And this is when a rollback happens, when you have a change between what you think their input is and what their input actually is. But this also means rollbacks only happen when someone presses something, when someone makes a meaningful change in their inputs. Let's take a look at meaningful changes in inputs. We're looking at this guy. We're looking at the pink guy. Right. And okay, let's go frame by frame. Okay, so holding right for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Holding duck for 1, 2, 3, jumping. 1 and holding right. Blah 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 blah. Okay, what's he pressing? I can't tell. Probably nothing. Jump again. Holding the right now. For so many frames. We are like, I don't know, 1-2 seconds in. This guy has not made a lot of changes. This guy has not kind of made a lot of changes in inputs. Like, this is the amount of inputs that you have in a regular fighting game, right? You're gonna change like directions. Like, let's say you're shimmying someone in a fighting game. You're changing directions and inputs faster than that. Like, this game, you can see how these guys move. It's not that much more complicated than a fighting game. Like, the moment they change.
I'm ballsy. I don't
Incident 73, thanks so much.
I smoke my stogie anywhere I want.
So you're kind of seeing how these guys move, right? If you follow one person, they're not changing their inputs. They're not, like, inputting new things that much more frequently than a regular fighting game. So the whole thing about, like, oh, movement is slower and there are long warm-up animations. It's like, no, not really. That's not how that's not how fighting games fucking work. Because movement can be fast and changes in inputs also can be pretty fast. And it's like, oh, our attacks are instant. Okay, let's see it. 1, 2, 2 frames. Okay, I guess like 1 frame. And they're like, okay, hey, we have, yeah, long warp-up animation of Solus 5K. Exactly. These guys absolutely just have no fucking idea what they're talking about already. But this is a one-hit kill game where attacks come out instantly. Rollback would just mean you would see yourself die instantly to teleport attacks. Okay, so, let's look at that kill again. Let's look at, like, literally any kill. Any kill that happens. Boop. Did you react to the kill? Could you have reacted to this kill that has happened? Is that like something that you are reacting to the point where if we like if like instead of being killed, like where is it? It's further back. Okay. Come on. Instead of being killed, like, this guy is fucking like whoop 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 whoop. You cannot react to this shit. Bam, you died in 1 frame. So instead of dying like this, it goes from this frame to, let's say, here. Is that more reactable? By the way, I tapped that shit like 4 or 5 times at 60 FPS. That's a 5-frame rollback. This is a 5-frame rollback. Instead of dying here, you die here. Is that like a change that makes the game feel unfair or weird? Because you cannot fucking react to this movement, right? You cannot react to this thing specifically. You're reacting to movement, and movement in this game, you don't really change inputs that much. It doesn't look like you can meaningfully control your trajectory like a huge amount. Like, you commit to a direction where you're in the air. That's the startup. That's the wind up for your strikes. The fact that you have to commit to like a direction where when you're in the air. Because like if you want to go to the other direction, you decelerate, swear, blah blah blah. This is nothing different from fighting games that would make it, oh, rollback doesn't work. Rollback would just mean you would see yourself die instantly to teleport attacks. You already die instantly. Wrong. Okay, but let's go into the other subjects. So we're past this subject. Let me, where's my red? Yup. Street Fighter 5 poisoned the well, huh? Street Fighter 5 was literally the worst fucking thing that ever happened to rollback. Oh god, do you guys know what's up with Street Fighter 5? Let's talk about what's up with Street Fighter 5 for yet another time, because it's fun. in like literally any game, you're sending inputs. You know what? I'll let this guy fucking do it for me. Cause he has a nicer graph, right? I press X on a 3-frame delay, right? And then the input gets sent. And then the input gets sent. Is that the rollback one? Okay, let's do the lockstep one. So you have the frame, you have like a 7-frame delay. You press a button on frame 1, and before frame 8, it arrives. And before frame 8, it arrives. So it gets saved, and it's like, cool, I have it on frame 6. And then when it comes to frame 8, it gets played. That's how it works. So we wait until frame 8, and then you wait until the frame 8. I feel like some devs are scared of the investment and not necessarily seeing more successful projects. Like, it's absolute ignorance, I think. Like, it's a we didn't look too hard into it. We didn't do any testing, but based on what we think it is, based on what we've seen, we think it has problems. And, yeah, that's like absolutely the fucking worst way to go about it. So based on what we've seen, we think it has problems. Anyway, Street Fighter V Poison the Well. So you see like how, different inputs arrive at a different frames. Like I press X. Let me kind of recreate the graph so you guys understand what I'm... Lockstep is a sweet... It's called deterministic lockstep. Like, rollback netcode is built on top of deterministic lockstep, right? Rollback netcode is built on top of delay netcode. So, it can be bad netcode if you want, but it doesn't have to be bad netcode because you can build stuff on top of it. So I press X on my screen, and on your screen it arrives like, it arrives here. And that's like, you know, it arrives like, let's say, 3 frames later. What happens in Street Fighter V is that there's a timing issue. So one of these games is behind. So that we move this shit like here, right? So this line, well, let's take the line with us, because that's important. Boop. And their shit arrives like super late. One of these games is lagging behind. When in Street Fighter V you get one-sided rollbacks, how did this happen? One game is, let's say, on frame 100, the other game is on frame 90, or frame 95, or frame 96. That means all of their inputs arrive always late, and always cause a rollback. So if you're here, this is, let's say this is frame 100. Frame 100. This guy's on frame 100 like way later than you. So you're in frame 100 and it's like, okay, I hope I got their input soon. You will not get their input soon because they're running behind. And that's what's happening with Street Fighter V. What Street Fighter V's problem is that what it allows one of the players to, like, you know, through lag, through something, let's say they get a lag spike while loading the next round, let's say something like that. Their game can run behind yours. Their game can run like you might be on frame 100, they're gonna be on frame 90, 95, something like that. Which means their inputs are always going to be late. If their inputs are always going to be late, you're gonna have to simulate frames that you don't have inputs to, and then go back, and then when you get their inputs, make rollbacks. When inputs are late, rollbacks happen. That's the problem with Street Fighter V, and it's the worst fucking shit. Street Fighter V poisoned the well so hard. We had, like, actual people that are like, if this is what rollback is like, I don't want it. Ah! It's like, what? If, like... Oh, it's like... It's such a bad look for netcode, and that's something that people like this can look at and be like, oh, wow, rollback bad? Is the worst part is that even Tony Counter has explained what the problem with Street Fighter 5. I have explained it too, but a lot of people have. A lot of people that are much cooler than than Capcom stuff have. Yeah, essentially they didn't do shit about it, but yeah, Street Fighter 5 has poisoned the wild because people see that absolutely terrible broken implementation of rollback and are like, no, this is fine. You signed it to Capcom before the full release of Street Fighter 5, really? I didn't know about that. That's funny to me. That's insane. If Capcom was not stubborn to like completely like do their own shit, we would have had a good game. Animation fluidity and rollback versus visuals, I think we've talked about. Again, Street Fighter fucking 5. Simple, you know, fluid animation. Most get, like, even Strive too, right? The animation runs at the full 60 frames per second. There will be visual jumps, and they just don't want the visual jumps because that would make the product less whatever. Rollback versus fast games, whatever. We also talked about this. Like, if you think your game is fast, your game is not fast. Right? Rollbacks happen when meaningful inputs change, right? So you see gameplay, you see a video of a game and you see gameplay and it's like, oh, you know, you make one meaningful input every like 15, every 20 frames, something like that. That's not fast. Like, that's not in any way like faster than fighting games. What if your game is Samurai Kirby? This game doesn't need rollback because if both players have the same delay, essentially their reaction time is the same. Sorry, I had paint.net. Here's a game that doesn't need rollback because the reaction time is the same. So even if I press a button on frame 3 and you press a button on frame 4, it's the same if I press a button on frame 13 and you press a button on frame 14. This game can do with 10 frames of delay. Fuck it. Make it like Smash. Sure. Let's talk about rollback as a tool. Let's say none of what I've said has convinced you about anything. Let's say, literally, if Meta Knight reacts to signal at 60... Oh, I thought you meant, like, multiplayer this. But anyway, so... oh, Incident 73 thinks I'm so well. I don't think I said it. So, let's take a look at rollback as a tool, right? There's the crowd that does not understand rollback, and then there's the crowd that, like, doesn't understand rollback and also doesn't understand that it's a tool to be used and that it's not like a prison. Rollback is not a prison. Valerie Pallery, 2021. So, let's take a look at the best scenario. Well, we've talked about it already that 8 frames of rollback gets you basically 98.4% of the matches done. Like, you get it. And that's with zero input delay. Here's a few, like, there's the notion that rollback means, like, that you will have a lot of stuttering, that you will have big stuttering. Here's the idea. You can add delay to your rollback, right? You can add delay to your fucking rollback. That 200 like 40 ms where it was like, oh, 8 frames of rollback. That's with 0 frames of delay. You could have an appropriate amount of delay to your rollback and have less rollbacks. Whoa! So what's the number one thing that we want in fighting games? What's the number one coolest thing? What's the number one coolest thing? The number one coolest thing is stable delay every match. Stable. I'm stupid. Stable delay every match. And so every single game has like let's say, when I say stable, I mean preset. So like, let's say Guilty Gear Strive, you have like 1-2 frames of delay whatever match you play, right? Every single match has the same delay. And then the variable rollback accounts for differences. That's the number one coolest thing. It means like, no matter what, no matter who you're playing, how much better delay best netcode would be if you could set the delay to a fixed number? It would be worse. Sorry. Because, again, okay, you need the other player's inputs to simulate a frame, right? If you, what delay netcode is based on is that if you have your inputs and your opponent's inputs, you can simulate a frame. And the same goes for your opponent. If you both have each other's inputs, the frame you simulate is going to be the same for both of you. If you take that out of the equation, if you don't have inputs for a frame, you cannot simulate it. That's where freezes happen. Freezes happen, like the game freezes because it's waiting for an input. If you set the delay-based netcode to a fixed number, let's say it takes 5 frames for you to get an input for your opponent, and you set the delay-based netcode to like 2 frames. Every frame you would have to pause for 3 fucking frames to get the next input. Like for every single frame you simulate, you would pause 3 frames. So that's not how it works. You can only set the delay to a fixed number if you have another solution like rollback that lets you simulate frames without having inputs. Hope you understood that. I'm not gonna say it again. Okay, number one coolest thing. Every match has a fixed delay. Let's not say stable, let's say fixed. Oh, that's the wrong layer. Fixed delay every match, every single match. Number 2 coolest thing. Can someone guess what the number 2 coolest thing is? My number 2 coolest thing. Choose your own delay. Variable rollback. Like, you pick your own delay to, Skullgirls did this, a lot of games could do this, blah blah blah. You choose your own delay to kind of tailor your own experience, and it doesn't have to be like a screen where it's like, hey, oh god. It's like, hey, pick between 7 to 8 frames of rollback. 7 to 8 frames of like 1 to 5 frames of delay. It doesn't have to be like that. You can make like a user interface that's like you have like a gradation, and it's like here's me. UI UX is my passion. You have this kind of line, and it's like more stable, more responsive. And then you put like, you have your little indicator here, and you say recommended. And then you can slide the little slider around, and it's like, oh god. you can slide the little green thing to more responsive, and it's like, oh, 1 frame of delay, or more stable, oh, 4 frames of delay. And you're as a user, you can just press fucking X as a baby mode, like noob master, and be like, okay, recommended. And how would they do the recommended? It's like, okay, cool. They're like, okay, our game works best if it has like 4 frames of rollback. You know, like if it's the maximum, the rollback is like 3 frames. So they adjust the delay. They put the recommended where it would kind of accommodate for delay enough to where you're left with 2-3 frames of rollback or something like that. Number 3 coolest thing. Number 3 coolest thing, same as above, but they don't tell you, they just do it. It's number 3 coolest thing. A variable rollback again. Of course, when I say variable rollback, I mean like the amount of rollback that you get. There's obviously a maximum amount of rollback that the game supports, but the amount of rollback that you get kind of changes. I don't have to even type it, I think. Same as above, but you know, it's always the recommended thing. That's what Tekken did essentially. So let's see, Strive. Skullgirls, and also Fightcade. Tekken. Tekken unfortunately did not have a lot of delay frames to kind of make this work, but sorry, a lot of rollback frames to kind of make this super impactful, but it was a thing, and it, you know, made some stuff better, especially after the update. What's the number coolest thing? And this is obviously like, you know, no rollback. A lot of the text gets smaller and smaller, but you see, you know, we have a lot of kind of ways to use rollback as a tool. Use rollback, you know, in order to kind of make something better. Not necessarily, we don't do like what Strive necessarily and like Street Fighter V did. There's also Street Fighter V. It's not like, oh, we'll have like 0 frames of added delay and then all rollback and let it fucking go. And if you think, you might think that, okay, this doesn't actually fit my game. Cool, you can use rollback to let your players decide what your game should feel like. You can use rollback to reduce delay even a tiny bit, even by 2-3 frames. It's gonna make your game feel better. And the worst thing is, no rollback. You use rollback as a tool to make your game better. You're not like, oh, rollback does this and this, and we hate it. Rollback is a tool, and it will make your game better. A 2-frame rollback is imperceptible, and already, like, if you go from 5 frames of delay to 3 frames of delay, that's fucking godlike. 5 frames feels like shit. 3 frames feels pretty okay. And 2-frame rollbacks are pretty much imperceptible. So what the fuck? That's it. That's my talk. That's everything. We're done. I hope you enjoyed it. We're gonna watch a shitty movie unless anyone has questions.